Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2022 drama, The Whale. Now, The Whale is actually based on a play of the same name by Samuel Hunter, who also wrote the screenplay. So he adapted his play into the script for this film. And this actually happens a fair amount of times when it comes to adaptations of plays, where you have the playwright themselves who come in and write the screenplay and adapt their work for the big screen. And it's directed by Darren Arnofsky, and this is actually the first film Aronofsky has directed in quite a long time. In fact, the last film he directed before The Whale was Mother, and that was in 2017. So he had a pretty considerable layoff when it comes to directing. Now, the film has definitely gotten a lot more buzz lately because of the fact that Brendan Fraser won the Oscar for Best Actor for his role in this film. And it's also been a little bit under fire when it comes to some controversy involving the film and people accusing it of being fat phobic, among other things. But I actually checked this film out before any of the controversy and before Brendan even won the Oscar because I was curious about it. Because you don't really see a lot of films, a lot of serious dramas that center around a protagonist like this, a protagonist who is morbidly obese and doesn't have that much long to live. It's not something you see a whole lot of when it comes to these overweight kind of protagonists. When a film stars an overweight man. A lot of the time, these films are comedic, like The Nutty Professor and so on and so forth. So it's refreshing to see a different perspective. I would say one other a film I can think of that starred an overweight man and focused on his struggles and was more of a dramatic approach, but with some comedic elements, was Fatso, a film that starred Dom DeLuise. But since then, there really hasn't been a lot because a lot of the time it's just, oh, look at the fat guy, look at the skinny guy in a fat suit, and laugh at the fat guy, And this wasn't one of those things. It was playing itself very straight, very serious, and despite the title of the film, which I know some people might interpret as a dig against fat people, oh, the whale, um, this movie isn't really fat phobic. And I'll go into that more in depth as I continue to share my thoughts on the film. But anyway, might as well start with the top, with the person who is behind the camera with this film, the captain of the ship, so to speak, and that is Darren Arnofsky. And Darren Arnofsky is a director that is incredibly talented, and this film shows that he's still got it. I mean, you would think maybe after a considerable amount of time not directing that he might show some rust, and that wasn't the case here. I thought his direction in this was really good. I thought he did a great job, especially for a film that's very limited in terms of its scope and the setting. And a lot of that is done on purpose to further immerse the audience in Charlie's world and inside his life and his troubles and everything that's weighing him down. And that's why so much of the film is very tightly crammed together when it comes to the visual aesthetic, and I think it really works. It's a very effective in terms of just continually weighing the audience down and just feeling the weight and the emotion of the film in every frame. It gets to the point where it can actually be claustrophobic, and I believe that was done intentionally to just really solidify the way that Charlie is living the last days of his life, and also the weight of what he does in his last moments. And it's not like the direction is that static or that sedentary. Like it could have been, it easily could have been something where it didn't move at all and got covered in bed sores and so on and so forth, similar to the film's protagonist Charlie. But that wasn't the case. There were times where the direction was dynamic, where Arnofsky did use different camera angles, different techniques, different kinds of pans or zooms or close up or wide shots to really create some nice looking shots and to maintain a fairly consistent visual tone throughout the film. So not only that, Arnofsky made a conscientious decision and effort to shoot the film in full frame because he felt that that was another extension of the aesthetic and the atmosphere and the mood that he was trying to go for with the film, in terms of just really trapping the audience along with Charlie during these last few days of his life, and trapping the audience with Charlie's grief and his angst and his torment. And I feel that is a really inspired choice. It shows how brilliant of a filmmaker Darren is, because a lot of people wouldn't even think of that. They wouldn't even think about shooting the film in full frame in something other than 16 by 9, because they wouldn't think that that would really add that much to the movie. So it does showcase how knowledgeable Darren is when it comes to the medium of film, that he's aware of how a different aspect ratio can really create a completely different feel for the film that he's directing. Now, the screenplay by Samuel D. Hunter, the playwright, this is where the film has its few ill-fitting moments. At the end of the day, I would say that I like the film, but I don't love it. And a good reason for that is these ill-fitting moments. And unfortunately, it starts out with one of them. And I don't know if this moment was in the script for the play or not. If it was, it should have been cut out, because it's just not a good way to introduce the character of Charlie. And I understand that Charlie's a very flawed character who has a lot of issues that are detailed throughout the film, and a lot of problems that are weighing him down. But I don't really feel that this was the best way to give the audience a first impression of Charlie. It felt like it was just a cheap shock. And what I'm talking about is right off the bat, like in the first 5 minutes of the movie, you see Charlie masturbating to gay porn on his computer. And, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you're into. But I just feel like it felt so cheap. Like it was just an unearned, unnecessary, cheap shock to open the film. And it really wasn't a good way to show that this character is gay either, because that's how you find out that he's gay, is that he's watching gay porn and he's beating off to it. And I'm like, you don't really, that feels very tone deaf. when it comes to introducing his sexuality in such a way. But once you get past that, and I know it might be really difficult for some people, and I think it was difficult for some critics to get past it, and I can understand that because it's a very jarring way to start this film. But once you get past that, I think the script has so much to offer, and that's why it's frustrating. Is that this is a moment that starts off the whole journey, the whole story in a very bumpy, very rough way that wasn't really necessary. But once you get past that, there's a lot in this script that I think works. For one, I think it does a great job making you sympathize and connect with Charlie despite the state of his body, despite the fact that he's done this to himself. And in large parts because of his inspiring attitude, where despite everything just starting to spiral out of control and him having only 5 days to live, he still is able to find the positives. He's still able to find the light at the end of the tunnel. And he does it in a fashion that to some they find very annoying because of the fact that he's just constantly positive, even despite the fact that he's eaten so much and buried so much grief and angst and emotion that he's given himself a death sentence. He still is able to look at the bright side. And I like how Hunter writes Charlie in a way where he doesn't feel like a fairy tale kind of character. He doesn't feel like he's just a Hollywood creation that exists only in the movies, because he showcases all of his warts, all of his flaws, all of his folds in detail. It shows that at one point he was a family man. He had a relationship with his daughter, a good relationship with his daughter, and he had a wife that he loved and he cared about, but he was living a lie. And he fell in love with this other man, and he threw away his old life in pursuit of this new love, and he made a great sacrifice doing that. And then his new love, he had his own issues, and he wound up taking his life, and this led Charlie down a path of destruction, of self-destruction. And instead of something along the lines of somebody starving themselves to death, he gorged himself. He ate all this food as well as all of these emotions and all of this grief and all of these things that he was dealing with after all of these losses that happened in his life. And I like that despite him, being bedridden or barely unable to move, because he's not technically bedridden, he can get up and he's able to go to the couch and to the bed and back and take it and go in the shower, but he's not able to really do much else. I do like that they provide him with a job where he's working as a teacher online, and he doesn't show his face. He keeps talking about how his camera doesn't work to his students, and that creates a really striking visual early on in the movie where you have like this screen that shows all of his students and the black screen, the instructor screen in the middle, which really does accurately represent the black hole, the dark place that Charlie is residing in at the start of this film. And I like that Charlie's not the only one that's painted in a more realistic light. So is all of the other characters in the film that get any significant amount of screen time. His daughter Ellie, the Christian missionary who has secrets of his own, Thomas, Liz, his nurse and friend, who is also a enabler, and even his ex-wife. And I like that all of these characters just feel very raw, feel very real, and it really does help this film tap into some very genuine human emotions. And I like how it handles the relationship between Charlie and his daughter, and how it starts off very realistically in terms of her hating him and not wanting anything to do with him, but because of the fact that he's her dad, she still wants to be there and spend some time and humor him and so on and so forth. And there also is that thought in the back of her head that he's not doing well and he's gonna die, and so she doesn't want to leave him alone. She doesn't want to make it so he dies alone, or she's not there for him. That kind of thing. And I like how the film ends on a sweet note, despite the dour nature of everything. And the dour nature is another good way that this script is structured. I like how it's set up over a span of 5 days. And I think that really does add to the intensity and just the emotional gravity of the film's plot and the overall story. It becomes this race against time, this race against death, where Charlie has to, against all odds, find a way to reconnect with his estranged daughter before he runs out of time. And there are other aspects of the script that I think are also effective. For one, I do like how it handles a particular twist. Uh, Spoiler for those of you who haven't seen the movie, there is this portion of a book report that Charlie is using as inspiration to continue to keep going despite the fact that he only has 5 days to live and his time is very limited. And this portion inspires him and touches him, and it deals with the book Moby Dick. You find out by the end of the film that that portion of the book report was written by his daughter. And I thought that that was really a great moment. I thought it connected everything together very well. And that is why the film is called The Whale. It's not called The Whale because of the fact that Charlie is this morbidly obese man. It's called The Whale because of that, because of the connection with Moby Dick and that passage from that book report that was written by uh, um, his daughter Ellie. And he's doing all these things for Ellie, so many different things for her. I like that too, that it shows that despite the state of this man, he once again had the heart and sacrificed so much for his daughter, despite the fact that she very well could have refused everything that he decided to do for her because of what he did to her when he left her and her mom to go be with this other man. But that just shows how much he loves and cares about her. He saved up over $100,000 for her, and sacrificed getting help from doctors and all this other stuff for his daughter. And you could really look at that as being completely and totally selfish, and I get it. And there's a reason for that, because Charlie in a lot of ways is selfish. And I feel the script, it doesn't shy away from that fact, how selfish he is. But it also shows how selfless he can be at times, and shows that he does have a good heart, despite the fact that he can be very selfish. And even the character of his caretaker, Liz, is another extension of this, where she's making her own sacrifices because her brother was the man that Charlie was in love with, and Charlie's one of the last connections to her brother that still lives. So she feels somehow obligated to be there for Charlie, but she has her own conflicts with that. But at the same time, she's lonely too. She's lonely and she's isolated in her place in life. And despite Charlie's issues, she really likes him being around. And as a result, because of the fact that they become dependent on one another and they build this friendship, she unfortunately enables him. She buys him all the food. She feeds him these unhealthy foods, because that's what makes him happy. And the codependency thing is very real. This is something that happens quite often in these kind of situations. And yeah, the script by Hunter, he shows people as they are in reality, as flawed people. They may have ideals, but they also have a lot of flaws. And like I was saying earlier, it even ties into the Christian missionary character, Thomas, which, spoiler again, you find out in a twist that he's not even really a missionary. He ran away from home, and he's faking it because he feels like he wants to do some good, but at the same time he just wants to get away from things. Now, this is an excuse for him to get away from his parents and everything like that. And through that whole experience, he gains perspective on his own life and the direction that he could take it in. And through everything that happens with him, where Charlie's daughter, Ellie, winds up actually doing a really good thing and contacting his parents through social media and letting them know that he's okay and where he is, he's able to go back home and his parents forgive him, and he's able to right the ship. He's able to get off the island, so to speak, in terms of where he was at that point in his life. And it shows that even though you might feel like you're grounded and you're anchored to a certain path in life, that sometimes there can be a way to get away from that. And that ties into the end of the film, where against all odds, on the last day of his life, Charlie finds a way to connect with his daughter again. And he takes steps and takes steps into the light. And I like the way that the film ends. It's very artsy, but I think it fits with the film, because I don't know how else you would do it. Maybe you could have one last shot of his daughter like smiling at him, before he looks up and the light flashes and he flashes back to that memory that he had on the beach with his daughter and his wife, and so and before everything changed. But yeah, overall, it's just a really strong script. Other than the rough beginning with the gay porn, I don't think that was needed. But other than that, I mean, it's a gut wrenching, heartbreaking story that really does showcase some very raw, real emotions of depression and what it does to relationships and what risks do in your life, where some risks you take can pay off, and then other times the risks you take can have very dire consequences. And it does show the impetus behind people, at least not all people who are morbidly obese, but it does put into perspective why some of these people become so big, why they wind up in the place health wise that they're in. And it ties into them dealing with trauma, and this is how they cope with it, much like a hoarder or some other form of addiction. They cope with their pain by eating it in large quantities. And that's not fat phobic. That's realistic. Like a lot of people who are in this situation, it isn't just a choice of, oh, I love being fat, and I love being morbidly obese and having 5 days to live. Um or it's just an underlying health condition. A lot of the times when it comes to people who get this big, there's something else behind it. And I like that the film and its story is willing to show that. But it's also willing to show that people who are in this position in life that they've created for themselves, they are human beings. They are people with souls and with good portions of themselves. That it's not all bad. And speaking of not bad, this cast is phenomenal. I mean, not only do you have Brendan Fraser, who more than deserved the Best Picture Oscar for me personally, in what is to date the best performance of his career as Charlie. But you also have Sadie Sink as Ellie, whom Brendan Fraser called the MVP of the production. She was always on fire and was always delivering a really solid performance every day that she was on the set. You have Simpkins, who plays Thomas, the Christian missionary. Chau is Liz. She was remarkable in her own right. Thought the connection that she had with Charlie was really believable and very strong. And even someone like Samantha Morton as Mary, Charlie's ex-wife. But yeah, definitely the biggest standout is Brendan Fraser in more ways than one. Brendan himself is a very deeply emotional person. He's very empathetic. And I think that kind of performer was very vital to this film's success. Because if you didn't have a character actor or an actor, period, who could put themselves under all that makeup and those pounds and pounds of latex and make it come to life, and also make you sympathize with a character that has as many flaws as Charlie, then it wouldn't work. And that's why I am beyond infuriated at people who are trying to go after Brendan Fraser for perpetuating fat phobia or any of this other nonsense because of his performance in this film. because Brendan doesn't deserve that, and Brendan is a good man, and he's able to show that empathy through all of the weight and the pounds. And to people saying that they should have just casted a fat actor, I mean, that's just ridiculous, because there are no 600-pound fat actors in Hollywood. And if there were, they'd be lucky to even make it through the production alive by the end of it, let alone deliver a performance that is anywhere near as good as what Brendan Fraser was able to bring to the role. So that's just absurd. And Brendan had a newfound appreciation for people who are that heavy through his work in this film. So that's something that people who are heavy and who are obese or extremely overweight can connect with, if you ask me. The fact that he was able to experience that firsthand. And he talked about when he took the suit off, that he felt like he was on a boat because he was just dealing with so much vertigo, and he just couldn't believe the effect that all that weight was having on him, and just how just strange and just uncomfortable it was when he initially took the suit off, and just how it just changed his outcome and his view of reality. And it just made him sympathize with people that are in that position in their lives. He just found it to be something that was just incredibly difficult for him to deal with, and he just couldn't even imagine somebody dealing with that for most of their life. So, if anything, you got an ally in Brendan, not an enemy. So yeah, just ridiculous bullshit going after Brendan Fraser for his performance in this film, or the fact that he was in this film playing Charlie. No other actor, in my opinion, could have pulled this off as well as Brendan did, because of just who Brendan is at his core and as a person and as a performer. He's a very talented actor, always has been, and it's really great to see him get the appreciation for his multiple talents as an actor and as a performer. Now, the film also has some other elements that I thought I would mention real quick, like the cinematography by Matthew Libaticui. It's pretty good for this kind of film. It's very dark, kind of dingy, similar to the way Charlie feels and Charlie's place in his life. So it's very fitting. The editing by Andrew Weisblum. At times, the editing, I got to be honest, how it edits in some of the flashbacks, I think that's a bit clunky. I definitely do feel it's not really the best that it could possibly be. Um, but it's not terrible. But I do feel that there's some moments where it's a little too choppy. The music by Rob Simonson fits the mood of the film very well. It's not anything that memorable or that compelling on its own, but it does fit the film fine when it comes to what Arnofsky is trying to go for with the movie. And the main other thing I want to talk about is definitely the makeup effects, which won a very much deserved award for best makeup. The makeup effects artists who worked on this film, they did a first, and they took an application that they created solely for this film that used computer generated imagery and I think maybe an algorithm of some kind, and combined it with practical effects to create the most photorealistic fat makeup that has ever been seen in any film, because the focus was realism and to show the gravity and the true weight of people who are this big, and map it to Brendan's body in a way that you haven't seen before when it comes to this kind of makeup. And the end result is just incredible. It is really a amazing feat by these makeup effects artists and the people involved with the film when it comes to that aspect of the movie. And it's something that's so important to the success of this film, because if you didn't have makeup effects that were this magnificent and this believable, then it would take you out of the film. It really would. And I don't think there would be any other way to have a performer, an actor, be this 600-pound man without the combined efforts of these makeup effects artists, because otherwise you're asking an actor to gain a excessive amount of weight that could potentially kill them. So there really was no other way to have this 600-pound man, Charlie, be played by an actor of the caliber of Brendan Fraser without another fat suit. Because Brendan even tried. Brendan tried to gain more weight, but it wasn't enough. So they created this fat suit, and the rest is history. So, anyway, I don't really know what else to say about The Whale, except it is a film that really does weigh you down with the emotion, with the grief, with the angst, and still provides some hope by the end of it. But it's a film that is very heavy in a lot of different ways, and it really does take a certain mindset to be able to handle it. And I wouldn't recommend it for everyone because of that. But if it's something that interests you and you want to see Brendan Fraser and you want to see his performance and see why he won the Oscar, I definitely do recommend it. And I got nothing else to say except thanks for watching my review of The Whale. And until next time, I'll see you later.